Hi, and welcome to the Best Teaching with Slice webinar. My name is Danny Chang. I will be your host for today. We have our special guest and the Best Network lead, Professor Nick Hawkins, who will be sharing some of his experiences about creating learning activities using Slice. This webinar is designed to provide support and insights for existing and new Best members who would like to or have been teaching their classes with images. We would like you to take full advantage of the tools and resources on Slice to enhance the teaching methods. If you have any questions or suggestions for future topics, please email support@best.edu.au. The session will start with a quick overview of Slice, how to find, annotate and share Slice activities with students and or colleagues. Nick will then share his teaching experiences with you, and we will end with any questions from the audience. This session will take about 30 minutes and we will include time at the end for questions. You can enter your questions into the chat tab where we will address them at the end of the demonstration. Okay, so let's get started. Just a reminder, BEST is a professional network of healthcare educators sharing next generation educational content and technology. Slice is one of 3 components of BEST. It is a repository of high-resolution biomedical images where BEST members have contributed more than 13,000 images to date, including diseased and healthy tissue. If you'd like to share your images in Slice, please contact Stephanie from the BEST network. I will now show you how to search for images on Slice. First, go to www.best.edu.au. Once you are in the home page, you can see 3 tabs for the Community, Courseware and Slice. Click on Slice, then click on Browse Slice. Go to the Search tab to the top right corner of the screen and type in a word of interest. You can then filter the image . Once in the image, you click on the Add Layer button. Once you add your layer, you can give your layer a name. So for this particular one, I'm just going to label it Danny's layer. You will then see an Add Annotate button on the top here. Click here to add an annotation. Give your annotation a name. So here I'm going to annotate the femur heads on this image. You can annotate in a few different ways. You can use a pin, a rectangle, a circle or polygon. In this instance, I'm going to use the polygon and trace around the femur heads. I can also change the color of my annotation. And when I'm happy with this, I click Done. You can create more annotations within that layer by clicking the Add Annotate button as many times as you would like. Once you're happy with your annotated layer and you would like to share with your colleagues or your students, click Share and you'll be presented with a link that's specific for this layer. You copy and paste that link in, for example, an email or a learning management system course page. And that's how you annotate an image and share with your colleagues. In order for your students to get access, you can also register your students for a BEST student account. In fact, you can send the list of students to support@best.edu.au and we can create the accounts for you. I would like to now introduce our special guest presenter, Professor Nick Hawkins. Nick is the lead and one of the founding members of BEST and has really driven the technical functionalities of Slice. Nick has been teaching pathology at the University of New South Wales for over 20 years. Today, Nick has been very kind to share his experiences with us on why, how, and the outcomes of using Slice to teach. So over to you, Nick.
Thanks, Danny. I see a number of advantages for using Slice, and obviously we have to put that in the context of talking about whole slide images. It's been known for a long time that whole slide images have a number of advantages. Easier for students to interact with teachers, easier interface for students, etc. The best platform in particular, I think, has a number of distinct advantages for people interested in using whole slide images. It is a cloud-based platform. It means it's ubiquitous. Anywhere you have a browser, you have access to slides. It doesn't require a server at the local institution, and that means it's reliable and it's economic. We also have a very large number of images, 13,000, including at least 1,500 whole slide images, which makes it a very useful resource for finding images and information that you may not have. And it also has, we've been very careful about developing accurate metadata, which allows people to find the slides they need. In particular, Slice has benefits because it is quick, it's intuitive as an interface, and what Danny's already mentioned, it has layers, and layers are a really important way of people being able to add and control knowledge that they have about their images and share that knowledge with others. And they're the particular aspects of Slice that I'm keen to show you today. So what I wanted to talk about was some of the examples of where we've been using Slice in the classroom in particular, and obviously many of those ways also make it usable outside the classroom and in the blended learning paradigm that's so popular today. So firstly, in lectures, I've been using Slice in lectures for quite a long time now because it's a really great way to provide students with carefully annotated and accurate images. It's one of the problems in lectures that students see wonderful pictures on the screen, but when they get home they don't have access to them, or they're in for very poor quality printouts in PDF files and poorly annotated. So how do you use a Slice in a lecture theatre? Well, firstly you find a Slice image that you want. What I do is I then make a layout that's specific for that lecture. Give it the title and date of that lecture if you like, and annotate it in ways that's needed. Hopefully I've already annotated an image and I can just copy it and then rebadge it, as it were. Maybe make a few changes. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Then the next thing is to just grab a screen grab of that image that you're showing in the Slice browser, and simply paste that into your PowerPoint and get the URL that's unique for that layer and that image and that zoom and that magnification, and paste it as a hyperlink into that image. So I'll show you what happens once you've done that. And that last slide, you might have noticed there was a reference to a blog post which will be available, which describes this in more detail. So imagine this is, as I say, a fascinating lecture by Professor Wonderful, and in that lecture, pretty standard task, you want to show students, demonstrate to them what tumor stroma means. And it's a complex slide, and it's hard to do that, but what I have done here is I've grabbed this from a layer in Slice and I've hyperlinked it. So when I click on this with my mouse button, what actually happens is that same image, same view opens up in the browser, and I can turn on the annotations of things that I want to show the students or not as I see fit. And of course it's a live image, so I can zoom in and be very clear about what I'm talking about. I'm in this bit, not that bit, not that bit. Or I think importantly, I can also zoom right out and show the students what I'm talking about in the context of the whole image. And that's an important thing. Normally you'd have to have 3 or more images to sort of, I'm zooming in to show students in a lecture what you're dealing with, but here it's just all there for you. And of course once you've finished, you just jump back to the lecture and carry on with your next slide. And one of the particular benefits of that is that when this PowerPoint is turned into a PDF, the students will have access to that same link, and that therefore be able to see that image and the annotations of that image that night or next week or the night before the exam, whenever they need to, wherever they need to, they'll be able to get access to it. So the second example I wanted to use was in tutorials, and tutorials are very important to us in pathology. Particularly we use it as a way of dealing with macroscopic pathology, and that usually means pieces of diseased tissue in perspex pots that can be quite small but are really very dense in information. So here's a typical example of one. This is a specimen, it's a very favourite specimen of mine. Sections of the heart. I would argue that if you understand everything about this image, you know mostly all the things that you need to know about myocardial infarction. And so I use this in a tutorial. But pots are very limiting, they're quite small. You might have 20 students and you want to be able to more easily see what's going on and demonstrate this with students. So the first step there is that as well as a physical specimen, we also have an image of that specimen, which I'm obviously looking at here, and I've made in Slice, I've taken that image and created a layer, which is the pre-class layer for my tutorial. And I've written a bit of blurb for the students about what I expect them to do, and you'll see I've labelled different areas of this pot in different ways, and I just call them area 1 to 7. I haven't given the students any clue about what they are, but I'm just directing their attention to them. So students could look at this before class. They just get the link through their Moodle or the learning management system you use. Chances are they won't, but when they come to class, I can still use this pre-class layer and I can project it on the big screen, and we can talk about each one of these areas in turn. And at the end of the class, I can then provide the students with a post-class layer, which is the same annotations as you can see, but with information provided about them. This is, I'll just click on this to show you what that looks like in real life, because it's a bit more exciting than the screen grab. Here we have those areas, and let's just zoom in a bit here. So you can see that there's quite good detail available here, and students can see this after the class. They can confirm, oh yes, that's the area of granulation tissue, that's the area of the recent infarct, that thing there, that's that left anterior descending artery, and etc. So they can get access to this and any other information that I've had here. Like for instance, I've actually hyperlinked this in that pot to all the specimens of that pot, and that's another approach that you can do. So that's an example of using Slice in a directed way in tutorials. The next area, and a common area that we use Slice, is in practical classes. And at UNSW we've been using virtual microscopy in practical classes for pathology for at least 10 years, and it's a very powerful tool. In some ways Slice is an incremental advance on that at the moment, but there are other ways that we're learning to use this which I think are really quite revolutionary. But in simple terms, this is one approach. This is we just saw this image before. I said I'll show it to you in the lecture, and what I've done now is I've copied that image from the lecture. I'll just click on this so we can see it actually live. There we are. And you can see it still contains those areas that I marked before for the lecture, but I've added a whole lot more stuff. And this is a pre-class layer, and so students get access to this. What I've written here is actually what's written traditionally in their lab manual, a series of questions about asking them to do stuff. Think about the image. And I've labelled again various features 1 to 6 here. Haven't said what they are, but this time I've asked some questions about them. Let me see. So what are these structures and how they relate to feature 3? So I'm posing some questions to the students, and the student can come into the class and think about these things. They can actually make a copy of this layer themselves and answer those questions down here by typing in there, but really at the moment it's just a way of guiding students to different areas of the slide and asking them what these things are. What's this thing here? And you might also notice that feature 4, for instance, they're actually little intracytoplasmic mucin aggregates, but if you look at this slide here, I've marked out quite a lot of them, and they vary a lot in size and shape and appearance, and it gives students quickly an idea of the range of things that might fit within that descriptor. And just like we did in the tutorial, we can have a post-class version of this as well, made available after the class, that allows students to revise and to think about what they've learned or not learned in their practical class. The final thing I wanted to show you or talk about was the idea that Slice is closely integrated with the other elements of the BEST platform, which is the adaptive e-learning platform by Smart Sparrow, and that's a platform where you can create very sophisticated tutorials that you can then deliver to your students, which not only allow students to ask them questions, challenge them, but also get a lot of feedback from your students about how they're performing. So what I did here was, it's quite possible to use any image in Slice, including the whole slide images, and simply bring them into the adaptive e-learning platform to create a tutorial very simply. Actually, there's a series of wizards there that make it very simple, but if you understand the platform, it's again, you can do it manually in a very simple way that allow you to create these little tutorials. And I just got an example here of one which I just created. It took me a few minutes. There's only one slide in it, so it's very easy. But this is a URL here. If you went to that URL, you would see this. It's publicly available. It's a little quiz, and what it's asking is about, I wanted the student to tell me what that thing was. It relates obviously to the prac class we just talked about. The important thing here is to realize that we are looking at the same thing. We're looking at a virtual slide, and I can zoom back out and see our old friend, breast cancer, there. And because it's in this platform here, what I've done is I've just asked these questions. I said, what's this? And the student might say, well, that's a blood vessel, and they'll submit that, and their feedback will be no, silly you, whatever feedback you want. Could be no, this is, go somewhere else and look at the blood vessel. And if they happen to know that that's a glandular lumen and they say that, then the feedback, hopefully, just do that again. Well done, you are correct. And so that was a one slide example of how you can create quizzes or assessments or tutorials using the platform that take into account, that make use of all the images that are available to you in Slice. And I guess the final thing to say about that is that obviously you can use that tool in assessment, and we have used that in summative assessments at UNSW. My colleagues have, where over 500 students were involved, and you can imagine that, I think they told me that to write the assessment took them about 10 hours, and it saved them about 50 hours of marking. So that's another use in which all these images can become available in pretty sophisticated assessment tools. So I think that was all I wanted to show you today, and at that point I'd like to call for any questions that people have about any of this, or are happy to go into more detail about some of the aspects of how some of those things are done. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick, for sharing your insights and experiences with us. We have now reached the end of the webinar. I would also like to mention a national-wide initiative called Best Ignite 2015. We are offering support, training and guidance for best academic members to either adapt an existing lesson or work with the best team to develop Slice learning activities for your students in semester 1. If you are interested in taking part in this initiative, please contact me at danny@best.edu.au. If you would like to contact Nick or collaborate with Nick, you can email him at n.hawkins@unsw.edu.au. If you would like to find out more about the images on Slice or would like to contribute your images to Slice, please contact Stephanie at the following email. Again, thank you for joining us today, and we hope you can join us for the next webinar, which will be next week. And in our next webinar, we'll also have our special guest presenter, Associate Professor Gary Villan.